everyone, this video is going to be focusing on examination-in-chief. Examination-in-chief is a common advocacy exercise that students will be expected to perform on the bar course, and it's likely going to be found in your criminal litigation module or perhaps a separate skills module. This video is going to explain what examination-in-chief is, the reason that we have it during a trial, and how to go on to successfully conduct an examination-in-chief during your training as a barrister. So what exactly is examination-in-chief? It's a type of questioning which is conducted during a trial when witnesses are called in to give evidence. They will be asked to give their account of what happened by the party who is seeking to rely on their evidence. Whatever the witnesses go on to say will essentially form their evidence in the trial. Remember to refresh your memory on the order of a trial. Typically, examination-in-chief of prosecution witnesses will take place first, followed by the defence cross-examining those witnesses. There will also be a separate video on cross-examination. After all prosecution witnesses have given evidence, the defence will conduct an examination-in-chief of the defendant to get his account as well. So how do we actually conduct an examination-in-chief? So to effectively do this, there are several things as a student that you will need to remember, and they can be broadly broken down into 3 or 4 categories, depending on who you are questioning. So 1, you need to keep in mind your questioning technique. 2, you need to make sure to get the witness's account, or if you're acting for the defence, you need to make sure you get the defendant's account. 3, this will only apply for the defence examination-in-chief of the defendant. You must put the prosecution's case to the defendant for comment. And 4, examination-in-chief is your opportunity to introduce exhibits to demonstrate that you know the procedure for witness memory refreshing if that comes up, and it will also test your ability to use the exhibits that have already been introduced, or even the ones that you have introduced to the court. So taking these one by one, first of all, questioning technique. In examination-in-chief, it is important that you ask witnesses non-leading and generally open questions. A non-leading question may, for example, be, Mr. Jones, what happened after you saw the fight? These questions will typically result in providing a full account. Leading the witness essentially means feeding them answers. And we want to stay clear from this for as much as possible in examination-in-chief. But you are able to lead on matters that are not in dispute. So for example, in a case where the facts make it clear that the defendant was on Yellow Lane, you might say, it's right that you were on Yellow Lane, Mr. Smith, that morning. Can you tell the jury what happened on Yellow Lane? Open questions will be questions that do not essentially result in a yes or no answer from the witness. So for example, where did you go afterwards, Mr. Smith? This witness is not going to be able to answer yes or no from this question and is going to give you a fuller account. Secondly, you need to get the witness's account, and if you're acting for the defence, you need to get the defendant's account. And this is more or less self-explanatory. So when using the above questioning technique that I just talked you through, you want to make sure that you are asking a variety of questions which are going to effectively seek out all the information that you wish to rely on from that witness's account. Remember to ask questions that will cover all aspects of an incident or all the issues in a case. Thirdly, this particular point, as I mentioned before, specifically applies to examination-in-chief questioning of the defendant if you are acting for the defence. So it's likely that an examiner is going to be looking for your ability to put the prosecution's case to the defendant after you've got their full account in their own words first. The prosecution's case is going to be all the evidence that has been given in court by the prosecution witnesses from before. Finally, this is simply a prompt to remind you that examination-in-chief may also be an opportunity for you to demonstrate your ability to introduce exhibits, to use that exhibit when you're questioning the witness or the defendant, and to also go on to demonstrate other skills such as witness memory refreshing if they are in fact relevant on the facts of the case. Remember to review the procedure for all these separate skills and to use them to earn extra marks in the exam where the case might require you to demonstrate those skills. So to finish off this video on examination in chief, I'm going to give you an example of a defence examination in chief of the defendant. Could you please state your full name for the court? Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'm going to ask you some questions first and foremost, and in due course, my learned friend will also have some questions for you. Please take your evidence slowly so that we are able to take note of it. If you could also speak loudly and clearly so that we are able to hear and understand the evidence that you give, please. I'm firstly going to ask you some questions relating to the offence that you have been charged with, Mr. Smith. Beginning with the 17th of December 2021, could you please describe what your plans were for that day? And after you met with your parents in Piccadilly, what did you do then? So you went to see your girlfriend. Where did you meet your girlfriend that day? And what time was this? And where does your girlfriend live, Mr. Smith? And how long were you there for with your girlfriend? Mr. Smith, you've just heard the prosecution allege that around 9 p.m. that evening, you were seen with a knife in your hand in Marylebone. How would you respond to this? So that was an example of an examination in chief. We all have different styles when it comes to advocacy, but this has just been an example of something that might give you a head start when you're thinking about creating your questions for an examination in chief.